Hi there. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Alan Derryard. I am a full-time football agent and the co-founder of Australia's #1 player agency, Elite Football. At the time of this recording, we have helped hundreds of players with representation, player development, and sending them overseas with our roster of over 25 professional football clubs that we have signed across Europe, UAE, and South America. But let's flash back to 8 years ago and start right at the beginning to a 17-year-old version of me. I was playing NPL at Gold Coast Knights at the time, and I wanted more. I felt the pathway wasn't clear in Australia. It never felt like I was going to break through to a first team or get noticed by anyone or have anything really happen in Australia, and I felt like there was nothing really going on. I wanted to pursue my football dreams like many of you probably watching, and I had no contacts, no guidance. I had no idea what I was doing whatsoever. Dad at the time had started Elite Football, which was known as Elite Football Academy back then, and it was really just trainings at the time. And while Maurice was, or has been in the football game for over 20 years, a lot of his contacts, a lot of the coaches, ex-agents, people that were in professional clubs back when, he was more involved in the game, no longer really were amongst the game. So in terms of what we had at the time, we had an academy, and there was this guy who had previously had connections and whatnot. And anyways, long story short, went over to this academy, booked my ticket to Spain. I was there for a few months, and to say we were just scammed is a bit of an understatement. The whole experience was something today I strive and make sure that none of my players ever have to experience. Being 17, and obviously, you've got dreams and you want to go for it, and it's easy for people to pull a rug over you and play with those dreams. And we were training 8 hours a day, and we were training on pitches that were just dirt pitches in parks. We didn't really even have installations. I could be here all day recounting very miserable memories from, getting into fights in the trains when we were going home at night. Silly things that affected me when I was younger, like having to shower in the nude with men in cold showers because there was no warm water where we trained, and we weren't allowed to shower in the residency, so we had to have cold showers in nude, which was something at the time I wasn't used to. Players, because it's sort of an academy setting, just elbowing each other in trainings, like breaking noses in training sessions, and boys that we would then share rooms with at the residency. It was a lot of pressure, and something that I guess I went through. I was there for months because I convinced myself that was what it took to make it as a professional player, that I had to go through everything that I went through, that getting into fights at the train station was normal, that having to have cold showers is normal, that training 8 hours a day is normal, that this grown man that was running this academy would just abuse the heck out of all the players, like severe bullying from an adult. It would just make you not want to really wake up the next day. It was treated like a military camp. It was quite bad. I'm 25 now, and looking back on it, it's so bizarre to me that he did things the way he did them as a grown man. With that all being said, obviously, like, the journey going overseas and trying to do that is hard in of itself. Like, you miss your family, you miss your home, you miss your routine. Like, everything is different. Like, you land, and for me personally, I landed and I was 17, and I remember for the first 3 nights, I reckon, I was in bed alone, like when lights were off, and like I was crying myself to sleep. Obviously at the time I thought it was a lot harder than it actually was. And look, that's my experience. long story short, with that, obviously we got scammed. He didn't have the connections he said he had. I ended up figuring it out towards the end. I started to do a bit more research and look into, what was what, and it just, I realized it. During that whole thing, obviously, it wasn't cheap, and I lost a lot of my money, my parents' money, and I came back to Australia, and to what was probably the hardest year for me, just because you feel like a failure when you come back from overseas. It shouldn't be the case, but you do, and I can sympathise with some players that go over and they're unsuccessful now, that I represent, because I know what it's like. I know what it feels like to quit early, or to not have the funds to support yourself while you're over there, or there's just so many factors that go into it. Year goes by, and now I'm 18, and I want to go again. I feel like I didn't have the right shot at it, and I don't want to be 40 and feel like I never had that shot. So I go over, support from the parents as well again, and this time I built up a relationship from the first time I was there with someone from a first division club. We did play like a friendly game with some first division club, and I got some contact and a bit of this and that and whatnot, and passed it back to Dad, and he started talking to this contact again and whatnot. So I went there to this first division club when I went over again, and that sort of started what I consider the real football journey, which was me essentially jumping from different professional clubs, different leagues, first division, second division, lower league, third division, fourth division clubs, and just seeing where I could fit. It was a few months stints at each club, trials, friendly games. No one really ever offered me anything. Ended up getting something for like sort of third-ish division for a while. But ultimately for me, after being over there for a year or two, it wasn't... I realised the level that I was at the time wasn't something that I wanted to pursue. I knew I had a long journey in terms of leveling up my game and improving and being seen and growing from like a third division to climb the ranks. And I didn't really have it in me to do that. I guess coming from Australia and, just knowing that I could come back, I could do uni, I could, Australia, we live very well, and I could, pretty much do whatever I want. We have the access and the privilege of, going to work or going to uni or living a life that's above most people in the world. So with so much opportunity, I realized that personally for me, I wanted other things that the football life brought that wasn't exactly the football. And so for that reason, I decided to call it quits when I was about 19, 20, and came back to Australia. And I just really didn't want players to have to go through what I went. Now, at the start, when I was with this academy, obviously it was like horrific. A lot of the times, a lot of the things were just, don't even really want to speak about it. But even when I was with other clubs, there still was the sense of just no one caring. Like, there were clubs where you're an outsider, and and I'm fluent in Spanish. English is actually my second language, so I could understand everything they were saying, and I could communicate with everyone, and I still found it so incredibly difficult to be heard, to be seen, to get connections, to really work my way up. And I realized that no one cares. Like, you're just another number. Like, they've got thousands of players going through, and no one really cares. And I remember something that stuck out to me when I was there is that there were players that were getting respected. There were players that, you could tell the coach is favoured and this and that. And I remember asking them and talking. And obviously, boys are boys. You get along with people and you just start talking. And the one thing they all had in common, because they were all from different parts of the world, the one thing they all had in common is that they were there not by themselves, but they were there with an agent. And they all had representation. They all had a brand, a company, someone behind them, right? And I remember I tried to, they alley-ooped me, they gave me these agents' contacts, details and whatnot, and at the time I tried to talk to them to try and see if they would help me. And they all pretty much said they only worked with, professional players. So they only worked with players that were, semi-pro or pro, which they could sort of link up or take a percentage of their wage straight up. And none of them wanted to work with me because I was just an amateur player. I was there trialing and I didn't have anything backed up, right? And I guess when I came back, it sort of clicked to me, like, why should players... and I always felt like I could get into that level. And I realized it was very diplomatic. I realized that it was very much about who you know and your contacts, and politics in football is just, it's everywhere. So I realized when I got back and I didn't want to do football anymore, that I never want an amateur player, because I feel that there's so much talent in Australia and there's so much talent in the world in general, that I never want for a player to go overseas and to be disadvantaged because they haven't had the contract, because they couldn't get to play in an academy or, youth for some team in Europe because they didn't live in Europe. I never wanted all the excuses to be a thing. I never wanted to have to rely on visas or have to rely on chance or luck. And I just felt that there was nothing around. There was nothing authentic. And there's, not everyone, but too many people selling a pipe dream and selling something that doesn't exist. And I never want to do that. So I remember I came back and I spoke to Dad, and I just said, this needs to be better. Like, we need, there's a gap in the market. Like, no one is actually properly taking care of amateur players. And we can do it. Like, we can actually take care of players. And so obviously this journey has been, the last 5 years has been a lot that has gone into everything. And at the end of the day, it all just comes down to how much value you can provide to these clubs and the relationships that you build over time. But today we work with over 25 professional clubs. We're signed with them. We have exclusive relationships with clubs where we are their exclusive Australian importer of Aussie players. So we have agreements like that where we work directly with clubs and we make trips regularly every year, look at these clubs, look exactly how they do everything. For me, it's easy. Like, having gone through the experiences I went through, I guess a silver lining was that I now know exactly what to look out for. So there are professional clubs that we just don't work with, and they would love to work with us, and we wanted to work with them at the start, but once I went digging through what they offer and what they're actually interested in, they're not clubs that we work with anymore, because there is proper pathways. There is places that are going to be easier for international players, and there's definitely places that are going to be extremely hard for players. So I just wanted to eliminate that. I wanted to be able to confidently be able to put players in clubs and be that voice for them, filter that, and know that they're not going to get fucked around, and know that if they need anything, we're here, and the club has to work with us, because the club, it's not about the club not wanting to lose them as a player because they might not be that good, but the club's never going to want to lose us as a company that works with them. So that is what we've built in the last 5 years, is we've built that recognition to be able to have that power and be able to offer that to players. And really, at the end of the day, the reason I love what I do and while I'm going to love what the future brings, is because everything I do, I'm doing for my 17-year-old self. I'm doing it for the version of me that didn't have it. I'm doing it for the players that want to go pro, and I'm the person that I wish I had when I was there. So yeah, that's pretty much the story of elite football so far. Obviously we've done, we do events and we do representation and we send hundreds of players and we work with all these clubs, but at the core of it, we're really just people that got scammed, had bad experiences in the football world, and didn't want other people to go through what we went through. and we're just constantly working on getting better relationships and getting better clubs and better opportunities at the end of the day for our players, and improving the service as much as we can every day.